So 3 years ago, Melissa was a loan officer doing solid work, carrying some student debt, and about a fifth of her business was riding on a networking group. Today, she owns 25 rental doors, runs a full mortgage practice, has a team, and leads a team of loan officers. And I want to sit down with her today because of the story of how she got here. And it's worth telling. It's worth the story. And she's become exactly the kind of person you want in your corner when you're buying a home or you're investing or you're building something of your own. And I want to be able to share that very intentionally. So Melissa, thank you so much for joining us today. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Can you tell me, let's start at the beginning. Take me back to where you were when we started working together.
Yes, gosh, it's been so many years. So when we started working together, I was newer to the mortgage industry. I started 2 weeks before COVID. I was never in the financial industry. I had had multiple careers prior to that and jumped in, was excited. And when I started working with you as a coach, I was already, doing some business, but definitely was looking for the next level. How should I be running a business? How should I be refining my practice? How can I become the expert? Who can I be surrounded around? And ultimately just how can we make the process smoother for borrowers?
Yeah, that was really important to you in the beginning. It was like, I want to be able to have borrowers that actually experience an experience that isn't painful. And in the beginning, you had a really safe base that didn't really provide that. Can you expand on that a little bit?
Yeah, so I'm a user experience person. Like I want to be a raving fan of everything I consume, whether, that's like my day-to-day life, like and so I very much want my business to be the same way, right? Like I want people to want to work with me because they and walk away saying like, wow, that was a really smooth process. Getting a mortgage is very stressful. It is one of the biggest purchases of your life. It is your home. So it's very personal. It is your finances, also very personal. It's very emotional. And so I had not a great experience in my first time home buying process. And I think that's how a lot of people get into the mortgage industry. But for me, I want my clients to be raving fans and come back to me and just not say, oh, I got my mortgage through XYZ company. They say like, oh yeah, I went through Melissa and she was amazing and couldn't imagine this process to be as smooth as it was. Because everyone always talks about how much of a nightmare it is.
There was a point where you realized that your safest source of business had become almost the thing that was holding you back. And that was kind of parallel in two different arenas. There was the environment that you were working in where they were getting passed to some assistants and whatnot that just couldn't hold the user experience, to your point. And the secondary piece was just like this one networking group. And you were like, I don't know. I think that there's only one way to get this business. What did it feel like in recognizing that the safest source of business was actually holding you back at that stage?
Yeah, I think the process in general was challenging because there were multiple people involved in the process and it always felt like a fire drill, to be honest. And it was stressful for me. It was stressful for the buyer. I felt like we could never like get to closing on time or get to closing like smoothly. And so it was like, how can we like make this process better? How can we refine it? And ultimately, if we don't refine it, how am I going to build this business? It's great to get referrals from family and friends. That's part of where you start the process. As anyone that's building a business, you often go to your current sphere of influence. But if I do a terrible job for those people who like me without even like knowing what the mortgage process is, how will it be for the everyday consumer? How will it be for someone that is coming from a Google search or again a friend of a friend or just a realtor that you don't actually have a rapport with, right? They're handing off their clients to you in hopes, and it's an extension of their business and in hopes that you are going to take care of them and kind of holding their breath. Like, oh gosh, almost white knuckling is what I always think about. And it's like, will this person do a good job? And then, they hear from the client, yes or no, like, oh my gosh, Melissa's amazing. Or, I haven't heard from Melissa. She literally has ghosted me, right? So I think that is so important, particularly in this business. I think it's a lot of businesses, but so knowing that the process was going to be stressful already, and then knowing that, that's how I get my business, I really wanted to figure out how do we fix this and how do we expand other ways of getting business. In the mortgage industry, what I love about it is that you can get business from anywhere. Many loan officers rely on realtors, and they're a wonderful source of referral, but that's not the only place that you can get it. And so I think, and I may be getting ahead of myself, but I know when I started working with you, we really started to say, like, where else do we want to go? What is the vision, right? Where's the goal? And what other lines of referrals can we bring in so that we're not relying on just one? We always want to diversify in everything that we do.
Yeah, and I think you did that in an exemplary way. I think there's one aspect of just talking about something, but there's another aspect of actually going toward the thing that's intimidating you and doing it anyway. I mean, I remember there were a couple of resources and center of influences that you looked up to and had deep levels of respect for. And I guess my question here is like, what did it take if you were talking to another person in business or in as an LO? What did it take to start building relationships at the level that intimidated you?
Oh gosh. Well, I think some of it is just my personality. You know, a lot of times I run towards the thing that scares me just because I want to see if I'm capable of it. I push myself to the limit. That's my own level of intensity. But I think at the end of the day, and I know this is often said similar, like often, but people are people, right? Like we all put our pants on the same way, right? We all need to eat. We all need to, you know, do all the things that we do every day. So I think some of that, you know, although you can have a level of respect for someone and you want to work with them because of who they are and their ideals and their ethics and all of those things. I think it's awesome to work towards a goal and work towards someone that you admire. I also think that it's important to kind of step into your confidence and, you know, just know that you are a human too, and that you can provide a really good service and hopefully fill a gap. I think that's always like what I looked at it. Okay, I'm really intimidated by this person, or this person is doing lots of business and I want to be a trusted partner. And I really would go into a meeting or a conversation saying, you know, does this person need me? And if they do need me, where can I fill that gap? And I think that is an area where probably don't talk about enough, but I think that's an area where I really excel. Many people, many realtors, they always have their preferred lenders, and that's great. And many times I'm meeting them and I don't want to necessarily disrupt that, right? If they're happy with their people, like awesome, let them be happy. I just often want to know, like, what is going on with their business and how can I help support that? Really complementarily, you know, like I think I just made up a word. You know, how can I complement the business? How can I help them grow? Are there ideas that, you know, maybe I don't help them from being a lender standpoint, but have I maybe given them suggestions or made an introduction to them to help them grow their business? And I think, again, that is where I don't talk about that enough, because I think loan officers are not taught that. I think they're all just taught, go get the deal, go get the deal, go get the deal, right? Go get the referral, you know, go become the preferred lender. And I often, it's like, well, why do you want to become that preferred lender? Why do you want to look up to that person, right? You ask me that question all the time in coaching. Like, what are your goals and why do you want that? Why is that part of your vision? And how does that match with your mission and your ethics and your personality? Because it's true, like, why am I going after that person?
I think that's really powerful, because like I go back to how you are saying about your growth and how you run toward the things that are going to scare you. And I've seen that in multiple circumstances, both in person and in storytelling. From, you know, you're telling me about, hey, I just went toward this thing. Oh, this is a little bit crazy, but I just did this. And so I just want to situate for the person that's listening to this, like by August of 2024, right? She closed nearly $2 million in a single month, which for her was a lot. But here's the thing, and for any loan officer, it's a lot. She did it while pregnant, and she also did it while closing on one of her doors. And she didn't start out by like saying, oh, I want to close on 25 doors and have all these rents. She started out with like, I love financial literacy. Everybody should know about finances. This is such a cool topic. And so the volume itself started to become a problem, and she couldn't keep processing files and developing business at the same time. And so this took this like honest level of success where like, yeah, you were hitting these goals, but like it created harder problems than missing it, really. So when you walked away from the safe thing and business started to take off, right? It created a whole other slew of problems. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, they always say more money, more problems, right? You don't just get more volume, more business. You know, it doesn't just get easier; it actually gets harder. And but I forget the question.
Yeah, I think when you hit a month that I think that when you hit a month that you wouldn't have believed that you could a year earlier, right? What was actually going through your head when you saw that number and did it while pregnant and closing on a door? Like there's certain things that's a throttle up that you're saying, yeah, I throttle and I go for it, but like that is a throttle up that's like, damn, girl. Did you feel that inside? Or was it just kind of like, yeah, I did
So
that?
it's so hard. I feel like that was so long ago, right? And it wasn't that long ago. It was 2 years ago. And there are still months sometimes where it's like, how are we going to get to 2 million? And I'm going far beyond that now. But I think you look at it and you're just like, I can't believe I did that. And especially in a span of 30 days. It generally takes 30 days to do a mortgage. Sometimes you can do it a little faster, but we kind of look at it 1 month at a time, 30 days at a time. And there's sometimes you even get to, the end of the month and you almost forgot that you closed you close 6 loans in the first 2 weeks of the month. You like almost forget, right? Time, you lose time. So I think it's in one hand, it's you look and you're like, how did I do that? And how can I replicate it? And then on the other hand, you're like, all right, well, that was that month. All right, what's happening next month? And that can be the hard part of the job because you almost don't get to relish in. Obviously you relish in the moment, and that's why you go to the closings. And, you take the picture and you make the social post. Some of that is for you, so you can look back on that. Like, oh, do you remember when I did that many closings in a month or that much volume? Yeah.
Powerful. That's so powerful. I think like to your point, most people think like the hard part is getting volume. And I think for you, the hard part kind of started afterwards. Like it kind of broke certain points where like the business was getting big enough and you started thinking like, okay, where do I go from here? Is that true though? Is that my perception?
Yeah, and it's true. Yes. So I was pregnant. I remember like literally I was going into labor and I got 6 contracts that day. And it was like, oh my gosh, what are we going to do? Like I have to have this like kid, and that was great. Right. Like my husband had to take my phone literally from me in the hospital room. I'm not proud of that moment, right? I was addicted to my job and it's because I love what I do. But there definitely comes a point where you can't do it all. You can't like muscle through. You can only do so much as one human, right? And with so much time. So it's one of those things where it's like, how can, again, make this process better? How can we automate? How can we bring in other, staff members that can help support, but still not take you out of the business? I am the business to a certain degree, right? People buy from me. People want to work with me because of me. They don't want to work with me because of whatever logo I'm working on. And so how can I get the support that I need to continue to do what I love and be effective? And I think I think at that time when I looked around, it was like, I don't know if, where I'm at is aligning anymore with what my goals are and where I want to take the business. And I think you can be really satisfied in a certain company for a period of time, and then you might start looking elsewhere. And not that the grass is greener, but you start to talk to other people in the industry. Like, what are you doing well? What's going, like, how does it work for you? And again, I think that's how you elevate, right? That's how you get better. You're trying to get a feel for like, what are your peers doing? What are you doing better than them? What could you be doing? Is there something you could, replicate that they're doing that creates a really awesome user experience? And I think that's when I started to look around because I found that my clients were not having a good user experience. We started missing closing dates. And I remember having conversations with people in the industry and they would say like, how are you still getting business and you're missing closings? And I started to track it. And you encourage that, right? You always encourage that with the data tracking because that's not the emotional piece of it, right? That is just facts are facts. And things started to get worse, right? And I didn't even think that was possible, but I started tracking and as every month went by, we were missing more and more closing dates. And I was trying to speak up and I felt that I had a good relationship with, owners of that company. And I thought that they would make a change. And, again, that's when things started not aligning anymore. And I think that at that point it was like, well, this isn't going to work long term. I don't know what that looks like. And I'm certainly not going to just leave and go wherever, right? Pick up the next company. I mean, that was a big part of our conversations and our strategy. It was, okay, again, what is important? You may not be able to get your entire punch list of things that you need in a company, but what are the top 3 things that you need? And I really sat and thought about that because it's true. I didn't want to keep making a move. I didn't want to just go to a second company and then that not work out because I thought the grass was greener. And that, again, that is something else I think that people don't do enough of. I probably wouldn't have done that a lot if I had not been coaching with you. Because you really set that up, and it was like, oh, I didn't even think about that. I just knew. I was like, I need to make a change. I don't know when, and I don't know where.
And I think there's a lot of grief that kind of comes with that when you're a loyalist. You
Yeah,
when you take on a
too
loan,
full.
when you take on a loan, you are with that client. You don't see that as just like a client or like a number. You're like in the cave with them. Their pain is your pain. It's something that is direct with you. And I think that's one of the most beautiful aspects, but it's also one of the hardest aspects. I think as female leaders, like we tend to do that. Our mission is so much deeper than just like a transaction. And I think that also kind of brings us to, in a way, like I think that the lack of KPIs, the lack of an evaluation, the lack of systems in that previous company became really clear of, evolving a new standard of where you wanted to go. And, for a lot of CEOs, you go into that space of refining that standard, you're looking at an environment and saying, well, they don't have that standard. Like, is this just high hope? And so I think that's where you came into this beautiful place where if I fast forward then to September 2024, you interviewed and hired your first real hire, right? You had this understanding of KPIs, a 90-day evaluation, and is it going to be perfect the first time? Absolutely not. But it's a standard that you're stepping into it. And I think that when you're making your first hire, you were pregnant as well, and you were at a peak volume. And it sounds like in our minds the worst possible timing. But why did you do it anyway? Like what kind of like shifted that? Because you up-leveled that standard independently. You started operating in that new place and that new arena, new levels of KPIs for yourself. Started closing on time more consistently. I very rarely hear that something gets delayed, and usually if it gets delayed, it's a detail that the client did not
Yeah,
share.
it's a weird fluky thing. Something comes up, but that's the standard of my current owner, right? We don't miss closing. Like that's the standard. Like, and this seems so basic, right? Like that's insane to me. It's insane to me that that's like the feels so very basic, but I think it's important, right? I feel like even every single month now, we go back and we say, okay, if we did miss a closing or we missed it by one day, what could we have done better? What do we need to refine the process, or how do we need to refine the process? I sit down with my partners and, hey, we've been doing lots of business together. I know I'm not the only lender you work with. What are you seeing from other lenders? What could I do better? What do I do well? I think those are all important things. But going back to your question, why did I keep moving forward? I think it's because I'm just someone that really, I always push the envelope as far as like wanting more. And I again knew that I couldn't really grow and I couldn't get better and I couldn't help more homeowners by myself, right? And so when there's an opportunity, sometimes it's a timing issue and sometimes timing is bad. But sometimes timing, it's like, well, this person comes into my world, and yeah, is it going to be tricky and an uphill battle, and will it take me away from kind of what I want to do over here? Yes, but what is the bigger picture? What's the vision? What's the goal? Again, I go back to you ask me that all the time. What is your vision? What's your vision for 5 years? And generally, kind of hate that question, but I think it's important to think about like what is your vision? And for me, I mean, even right now. Do I want to have this whole team of 30 people? No, that's not really my goal. But I would like to go on vacation and not be attached to my email. That is a real goal of mine, right? And it's hard. This business is so like it's very personal. I don't want to miss a beat because again, it is. I do when I do something, I do it all in. And so, but that is the ultimate goal, right? So that's why we keep pushing towards that goal. How do we get there? What am I missing? What person do I need to bring on to be able to help round out this team so that we can give each other breaks and that we don't have to be in this burnout phase? We talk about that all the time. Like hustle culture is over. And don't get me wrong, I love hustling, right? But there is important, you do need to stop, right? You need to take a break. You need to take a vacation. You need to enjoy it. Like, we're all working so hard to do what? Let's enjoy life because we don't really know what could happen tomorrow. And again, I know that sounds so cliche, but that is the point, right? Well, I want to love what I do, and I do love what I do, but I also want to enjoy the other parts of life that I haven't seen a lot of because I've been working so hard in my 20s and my 30s, right?
I think that tees up my next question for you of like, really well, how you think of your own time and value in that space where once upon a time other people were dictating what your time and value were. I mean, you've been through a slew of different dynamics. You never were in finance before. And now you have loan officers basically banging down your door to say, like, I want to work with you. I want to be on your team. And just for clarification for people that are listening to this, like, she has not posted anything about this anywhere, has not talked about it anywhere, has not shared that she is expanding. She literally is getting phone calls from other loan officers that have respect in her industry for what she's done and the ways that she has created trust with her clients and the ways that she has created expansion even in herself. Owning 25 doors is no small feat, Melissa.
That's
Like,
correct. And I don't talk about it.
you never talk about it. So
Barely.
like, so what is that shift of like how you started thinking about your time and value? How was that shift of like starting to talk about what you bring to the table? Because I think that that's a valid piece of information when it comes to other people like me who loves investment principle, loves being able to 2x something, loves being able to 50x something. But 25 doors is a beautiful mission.
Well, I want to say it was accidental, but it wasn't. I mean, it was thought out. I never thought we would get to where we're at, and every single time we buy another property, I'm like, we shouldn't be buying this property. Or like this was never the goal, right? I think ultimately, my husband and I, we sat down and we talked about what does financial freedom look like? How can we create different streams of revenue? But also the rental properties are more than just a stream of revenue. I mean, that it's actually we target the diamonds in the rough is what I always say. There's different investors invest in all different types of properties, right? And it's all, again, what your goals are. We like the diamonds in the rough, and part of it is a mission thing, and that is a lot of my husband's mission and vision is like he likes to take these properties that had history at one point that have been neglected for decades, and he wants to upgrade the electrical box so it's safe, so the building doesn't burn down. Like, imagine a landlord doing that, right? But so, I think for us, we said, okay, how can we create a stream of revenue so that if we wanted to not work anymore, there could be some way that we still have income? How do we build generational wealth for our children? How do we, cover costs for the future? We don't know what healthcare is going to look like. So that was a big piece of it. And then it was like, okay, and then if we also can find these properties and we can upgrade them and improve it, that's really cool. It kind of fits a lot of boxes, checks a lot of boxes, right? And also create safe, clean house. And again, people really get on that bandwagon and they say, oh, I want to create affordable housing. But housing is not really affordable. But there is a way to do it. And I've gotten part of the reason why I don't talk about it a lot is because there are people who don't understand how rental properties work. And they immediately assume because we buy properties that are rough, that we are slumlords. And it's actually the opposite. The amount of money that we pour back into the properties, we've had our own tenants talk about how they previously hated the unit that they lived in. And when we acquired the building and we did minor upgrades, like replacing carpet, replacing a new appliance, upgrading an electrical box so that all of the electrical outlets will work. Basic thing. Tenants have told us that they actually now are not depressed and very much enjoy living in that unit. Again, like that's a tangible thing. Like that is something to hang our hat on. This is still a for-profit business. But the fact is we are making an impact. And so that to me, and we aren't jacking up the rents just to make it work, right? Like we're very diligent about what the numbers look like and can we make it work without having to crazily affect someone. Right. So I think that's important, but you're right. I don't talk about enough of that, and I should. It's just sometimes I don't want to hear the noise of everyone else's opinion, right? And people have told me that too. Why are you buying another property? Like, oh, it's not like you can manage one more thing like that. Your life is insane. And I go, yeah, it's crazy by design, but I love it. I love it.
Well, I think like if you're made for a lot, it's a beautiful thing to be able to be made for a lot. And if you're made for less and you crave less, then you recognize that and you make a decision around it. But I think to your, one of the things that I talk about for some of the female leaders that we've impacted is, one of my ladies, she purchases properties, upgrades them, and doesn't oftentimes, as long as she can, does not change the rent and gives them very minimal like increases if applicable. And that to me is one of the most beautiful aspects. I mean, it's not something that's possible for all of the tenants, and I recognize that, but like I think that you went from this place of like carrying every single deal, every single responsibility, every single late aspect and failures in system to this place of up leveling the standard, moving into owning 25 doors and changing people's lives and affecting them in a positive. And does everybody understand that? No. I mean, you're going to get haters at every single stage of growth. So I guess my question here is like, when did you stop thinking like a loan officer and start thinking like an owner or start thinking like a legacy builder?
I couldn't tell you the exact time. I think it takes a lot of, I think it takes a lot of work on your and how you change the vision of yourself. I think we have had lots of conversations around that where I'll say, well, I'm just this, right? And you're like, no, 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 except for can you just remove the right? Because words and I think that is, I was always taught to be very humble. And that's how I've always been. Right. And so that's part of the reason why I think I don't talk about the investment properties or the volume that I do. And I recently, actually, I was encouraged by obviously you encouraged me, but I was encouraged by a friend to get in front of my networking group and actually lay out my accomplishment. And that was a very hard thing to do because again, it feels like I'm bragging, but that's not what it was. And the whole kind of idea behind that was, why don't you tell people what you're doing? Because you're actually doing big things and like you're making an impact. And I took that advice and I did it. And I felt so empowered after that conversation, that presentation. And so maybe that was the point. I don't know if there's an exact moment. I think it's just you do start shifting and thinking like a CEO and saying, how is this going to affect my business? What if I do this? Could this make the business better? Could I bring in more business? What if I hired this person and I'm able to send them deals, to teach them a skill set and change their life too? I brought on a loan officer and she had been a stay-at-home mom for a couple of years. She has little kids similar to me, and she had never been in the mortgage industry. And her whole life has changed. Her whole financial picture has changed. And she told me last month that she never thought that this could be a thing, right? She never thought that she could not only love what she does, but impact homeowners and make a good living. And again, I think that we don't talk about enough of. And I think that's one of the beautiful things about this industry and about real estate in general is that whether, again, you're a loan officer, a real estate agent, you work in title, you work in insurance, you can, again, do all of these things, right? You can make your own schedule, you can build a team, you can make large impact on people, you can make a good living. And with that extra money, right, you can then go support the causes or the businesses that you believe in. And that ripple effect that happens is amazing. So
we talked a lot about in the beginning, because you met me when I was a financial advisor and I'm a recovering financial advisor, right? And so now, you've crossed a new financial reality than the one that you, I think than the one that you grew up assuming. And so
yeah.
I'm curious, what did like breaking through to that multiply actually change? What did like for you, if I can say this, if I'm allowed to say this, breaking the millionaire status and beyond, actually change for you internally? Because I know the ways that you don't order anything online. You don't have Amazon.
That's because of the user experience. Let's be honest.
I mean, but like you don't have Amazon showing up every day. Is it easy? Yeah, you've got two kids that are quite young. There's layers here that you could figure out an excuse to have, but you don't. And I'm curious about what changed in you and what did not change. I'm curious about.
So I think I've known and I believed in myself that I could figure out how to make a dollar, right? And I remember even that when I had my student loans. I mean, I had almost six figures in student loans when I graduated high school or college. I'm sorry, and I worked 3 jobs for 10, and I always felt like I was chasing. I always knew that I could figure it out if I could get into a space where I could control my own like destiny, money. And once I got a taste of commission, and that was in another career path, but once I got a taste of commission, it was like, oh wait, the better I do a job, then I can make more money. Oh my gosh, like I wish I had been shown that 10 years earlier. I think at that point it was off to the races. And then ultimately when I made the jump to full commission, and then, now I've shifted my thought of, okay, I want that thing. Oh, well, that costs, I have to close 3 more loans to get that thing, whatever that thing is. And that I think was a shift in my brain because now that's how okay, like if we want to go do that, then that's 4, 5. I need to close 5 more loans, right? Or if we want to go buy that investment property, I need to get my goal to this. So I think that let me go back to the I it's crazy just how like you grow up and like thing, I always think back that there's like a meme. You knew you were rich because you had X, right? Like as a kid. And I always thought like if you had like a pool, you were rich. Uh, and I'm trying to think of other things, but I don't know what the question.
Well, how about no, how about this? Like, what would you say to somebody sitting where you were sitting then? You said, I wish I knew that like 10 years. I wish somebody told me that 10 years ago.
Well, I think for me, like, yeah. So again, I grew up middle class, right? We were fine. I never went hungry. Never was concerned about where my next meal was coming from. Was my mom worked 3 jobs at one point, also, just to keep us in the house. She was a nurse and she was a nurse educator, and my parents worked, the jobs that they were kind of been told to work, right? They worked as a two decent. And that was that. They didn't know anything at that. They didn't know people that ran their own businesses. My uncle had uncle on each side that ran their own businesses, but generally people went to their job. They clocked their 8 hours and then or whatever, and they came home and they took care of the kids and did all the things. So I never knew that like commission was a thing. Like I kind of knew about it, and I remember even talking about with my stepdad one time. He's like, "Oh, you should go in sales. Like you like to talk to people." I'm like, "If we're going to sales." Salespeople are just like slimy and like they are liars, and like who wants to be a salesperson, right? Or sales. And then, then I get into sales and then I like crush it and excel it. You're telling me I get paid to talk to people. I remember when I first got into IT recruiting, and the person that hired me, he's one of my favorite people and mentors of all time. And, he said, I think you could be an IT recruiter. And I was like, I don't even know how to spell IT. That was always and he said, well, are you coachable? And I said, yes. And he said, can you pick up the phone and talk to people? And I said, yes. He said, well, then. And that sounds so silly, but I like to talk to people. I like to hear their story, and I like to figure out the puzzle. And but then to be rewarded again for doing a good job and ultimately, if you talk to more people and in that case put more people to work, then you could make more money. And so that was again the first time I had ever gotten exposed to almost unlimited earning. I mean, sure, there's a certain cap, right? You can again only have so many hours in a day, but to be exposed to that, it was like, oh, and then I joke around with my stepdad, like, well, yeah, I'm actually pretty good at this sales thing. And like, I'm talking to people and I'm making good money, right? Like, I didn't know that you could be a salesperson and be honest, right? And be transparent and and solve people's problems. I didn't know you could get paid well to do. And I wish I had been exposed to that sooner, because then it was an opportunity. Like, how do I get into a full commission job so that I truly can, control my own destiny? And is it actually doing, right? There are lots of jobs that they say you can make 6 figures, but then, to actually get there, it's like a 3-year grind, right? And nobody can last more than 8 months because it's really tough and it's a grind. You're a terrible conversation and a terrible time, right? Like terrible user experience. So I think, getting exposed to something like that. And then it was like, oh my gosh, like I can do these things and then I can make this money and then I can buy these rental properties, or I can invest this money elsewhere, or I can pay off this debt. Like imagine, right? Imagine that. Again, I had $80,000 in student loans. That payment every single month was a mortgage payment, and I didn't even have a mortgage. Like I didn't even own a house, and I paid that every month. And, it can change your whole world. And so now when I'm doing 3 million, 4 million, $5 million in volume, and then the paychecks that come with it, it's like, oh my gosh, this is life changing. I could potentially retire. Like I don't have to work until I'm 65. Mind blowing. Right? And I think that's part of like what our generation is getting like interested in, right? And we talk about that all the time, like, oh man, no one wants to work anymore. But I think we've looked at what our parents did, and I don't want to do that because they worked until they were 65. I'm not saying that they don't have any more years left, but they probably have 10, 20 good years where they can go and travel and enjoy their money and really like enjoy life. Who wants to do that? So how can we get there quick? And then if I like my job and I want to keep working, then amazing, right?
Well, I've had a front seat in these last couple of years. And I want to be clear about something. I did not build any of this. Melissa came in a way that was coachable and open-minded. Yeah, of course, you fight me. You're a wild horse in many ways, and I love. And what I watched was a woman decide that she was done with the ceiling that other people had kept on saying was this. She heard other people say like, "Oh no, your volume is this. Like, there's no way that you can go beyond this," and she's gone way beyond. And it's unglamorous. It's hard sometimes. It's the work of becoming somebody that does more. And she's saying it in her language set in a lot of different ways where she's like, yeah, I throttle to like the, I'm not, hustle culture is dead, yes, but like sometimes I love to hustle. And I think that being able to just watch that and becoming somebody who could carry 25 doors so far. The funny thing about this, also for people who are listening, I asked her right before we started, how many doors is it now? Because I feel like it keeps on changing, and it does keep on changing. Like she'll say, I know we shouldn't be doing this, but we're just about. And I think that the proudest that I am of all of it is who she became to get. Because it's not that she changed along the way. She's always been such a good person on the inside in terms of, I want to affect people, I want to impact people. User experience is important. That part is something that nobody else can take from her. Well, Melissa, it's been an honor to watch so far. I know we're taking the first part of this because I'd like to take a retake of this in about, but it's just something that's so beautiful, and the woman behind each of your clients is a real story that I'm proud of you to the depth of my soul for you sharing this today. So thank
Yeah, thank you for